I wondered if you wouldn't mind telling people a little bit about the A School that's going to be live streamed as well as held in Taupo.
Because of the COVID-19 restrictions, we've decided to put it on. Oh, hang on a minute! I've just appeared here.
Andrew's just sharing the. This is the
okay.
The A School.
So because of the COVID-19 and the border restrictions, we decided to live stream the A School. And so what Dus has been working on is creating very much like this, but community online, so that the same things that happen during the school, including having lunch together and having morning tea and afternoon tea, so that it continues to operate, so that people can be in small groups and just fellowship, just what you were doing a minute ago, meeting one another, just discovering where the connections and links are. But and then during the sessions, as a follow-on, when the school goes into soaking or other stuff like that, there will be an opportunity for everybody to be in a group, and the groups will mostly be built around time zones. So it just gives an opportunity just to process and in the moment, So as things are being shared, as things are being taught, people have an immediate response. And so every little group will have its own coordinator and host person who, if you have some other things that you want to talk about or pray about, you can be in touch with them. But it will run throughout the whole duration of the online school. It's a first thing. We don't, know everything about how it's going to happen, but we just it just seems that this has become almost like the formation of virtual communities everywhere. So so as an introduction, because there are virtually no other A schools that are happening at the moment, just going to trial this and see how it goes. It doesn't mean that we'll do this from now on. It's just, for this time and this season, this is what's appropriate. So we'll see how it goes and see what we learn from it.
I think it would be amazing, because many of us, it's going to give us an opportunity to join an A school in Taupo that even in normal times we wouldn't have been able to come to. So there are applications open for you to be there if you live in New Zealand, but also you can now join online. So you just go onto the Fatherheart website and you either join A school via live stream that Andrew's just shown you now, or you join the normal school. So you sign up, and I think there's a kind of an interviewing process, isn't there, Frank?
Yes, there is. So all of the people coming to the A school physically, there is a registration process for them, and all of the ones coming onto the live stream school, there is a process for them. And so they actually get processed two different ways. And we just want to ensure that the live stream guys have connectivity, in small groups, and that kind of thing. Something else that's worth mentioning too is we're looking at having other guest speakers, because it's on because it's live streaming. The guest speakers don't have to be with us in Taupo; they could be anywhere. So I think James and Denise are going to be a part of that as well. But so we're still working on some of the others. The great thing is, because it's a virtual medium, people can be involved from everywhere, and it deals with all the border restrictions. So, we're looking forward to that.
I think it's going to be, some people are driving at the moment, like Chris, I can see he's driving. I think that's going to be a fun A school. He's going to be driving along. When you're soaking and driving, that could get very interesting. The other thing to mention is the one-day conference, which starts in America and UK and Europe, it starts on Friday, the 26th of June, so 2 weeks' time approximately, I think. And in New Zealand and Australia and Asia, it starts on Saturday, the 27th of June. And it's $50 registration to join that conference. There's no interviewing or anything. It's being hosted by Denise and James and Mark. So that is also on the Fatherheart website. A lot of people have already started applying for that, which is wonderful. It's called. It's also in the chat. There's a link in the chat. You can see that, and you just click on and sign up. It's called Love in a Time of COVID. Sort of interesting. I don't know if any of you are familiar with a book called Love in a Time of Cholera, but it's a similar sort of idea. And I think it's going to be fantastic. That will be a bit like we're having now, only it's going to last all day now. They're going to be times you can't watch it because, like Europe and the UK, will be asleep for the second sessions, but we're going to be able to watch it afterwards. So we're catering for the fact that some territories will have to drop out when it's the middle of their night. Don't worry, you won't miss anything. So I hope that this gives you enough information. If you would like any more information, you email me on liz.benz@icloud.com. I'd be very happy to answer any questions. I'm sure Frank would be delighted to answer any questions.
I'd be delighted for Liz to answer any questions.
Yeah. So I think that's everything I need to tell you. I can just leave you to it now, unless you wanted me to ask you any more questions.
No, especially not maths questions. I'm not really good at that.
Right.
So. Excellent. Well, it really is so good. As some of you were saying, just seeing all the different faces in the beginning, it really is like catching up. You feel that rise in your spirit. Just oh, there they are. Oh, I haven't seen them for ages. And so, as a medium, I'm really enjoying this. But it's very new. I'm used to Skype. We just see one person. But for this is wonderful, and so I'm still just getting used to it. But, yeah. So let's begin. Because it's a different medium, I've found that even the process of Father, what do you want to say, has been different for me. Hard to explain that. But because you'll notice that you see my hands doing this all the time, I'm used to standing in front of a group of people where I can demonstrate or point, or I'll use my face to do something, or that kind of thing. And so now I'm restricted to the size of the screen, and so the good thing is at least you're seeing the best part of me. So that's a good thing. But so it's yeah. So Father, how do I convey what's in your heart on this little screen? And so he's been teaching me that it's not about the screen. It's really just about him. It's the same impartation that comes from him. So yeah. So I just wanted to begin by telling a story that leads into just something that he's been reminding me of. One of the things that began as part of my journey into this love of the Father has been just a little one-liner, and one-liners just seem to do it for me. They just they knock me off my horse. It's Paul gets a bolt of lightning and I get a one-liner, and just that's it. Just sits me on my butt and I'm off the horse. And so the one-liner for me was to go back and look again. And as usual, I have taken that almost as a temporary saying. He said that to me back then in that context, so maybe that's all that he meant. Just with this one thing, go back and look again. But I'm discovering that he's saying what he's been showing me is that Frank, you have been extracting the precious from the worthless as you look back over things, but you've been extracting them in terms of your testimony, the things that you received, the things that you got. So, and he just said, I want you to go back and look again and look for me. Look for what I was doing, what I was saying. And he said, because the things that happen to you, they happen to you. You see? And but the things that I was doing are applicable to everyone. And that's where the life is, and that's where the impartation is. So, so today, that's what I want to talk about. Just some stories and going and looking back again and extracting the precious from the worthless. One of the ways that he began to say this to me was I was with a very good friend who was telling me his story about terminal cancer. And he said, I had this cancer, and as a pastor, as a leader, he said, he was very open with his congregation, and they began to gather around him and pray. And he said this whole process went on for about 2 years. He said, and they prayed, and they didn't see any great change or results, and so then they started fasting, and then they started having 24-hour gatherings, specifically focused on his healing. And he said he went through really quite an amazing process, and tried everything that he knew how to try. And at the end of it, he was admitted to hospital, and while he was lying in hospital, in the hospital bed, he said the Father just began to speak to him. And he said, I've done everything I know how to do. Does this mean that healing isn't going to come? And just, he said very simply, he said, Father just spoke to me, and he said, no, I'm going to heal you now. And he said, well, why are you healing me now, when you didn't do it when the church prayed, and you didn't do it when we fasted, and you didn't do it when we had our 24 hours of focus and all of this kind of stuff? He said, so why are you doing it now? And he said, he was really amazed at the Father's answer. And he just said, because if I had healed you after the people had fasted and after you had strategically planned all of those meetings, he said, you know what you would have told the people? You would have told them that the key to healing in these kinds of cases is fasting and praying. He said, the reason I didn't do it when you had your 24-hour gathering is because if I healed you in that time, you would naturally have put one and one together and said to other terminal patients, well, what you need to do is have a 24-hour gathering. And so he said he just began to cry, and he said, so Father, why, if you didn't heal me then, why are you going to heal me now? And he just said, because I love you. And when I heal you, he said, that's what I want you to tell people, that I heal because I love. It's not a strategy or a plan or connecting all the dots or working it all out. He said, I know now that when you receive this healing, he said, that's going to be your story. He said, oh, we tried everything else, but you know why he healed me? It's because he loves me. And so he was miraculously healed. He wrote a book about it, and he said the first terminal cancer patient that he met after that time, he told them the story and then prayed for them, and they were wonderfully healed. So I guess that's where I'm coming from today. It's that whole thing of going back and looking again, because very often the conclusions that I've drawn haven't been necessarily based on revelation of him. It's just been, I've tried to connect the dots. I've tried to work out, oh, it must be because of that, or it must be because of this. But in its simplicity and in its dynamic, he does what he does because he loves us. And so I guess if this message is a title, it's called The Journey's End. And I remember having, in earlier years, just beginning to scratch the surface and coming to experience the love of the Father. And after 30 years of serving and teaching on the little bit that I had understood, mostly my testimony. At the end of that 30 years, everything that used to work stopped working. And I really was puzzled as to why. And it's as though everything that I had developed and understood, well, this happens because of that, and that happens because of this, and I've learned how to do this and this and this. And it affected everything, I remember one day teaching in a school, and I'm going to teach for the whole week. And on Monday morning, I'm just preparing for the week, and Father just asked me a simple question. He said, "So, Frank, what are you going to teach this week?" And I said, "Well, this is what I've got lined up." And he said, "So, what would you say are your biggest revelations?" And I said, "Oh, it's obviously this and this and this." And he said, "Wow, that's wonderful." And then he said the most unexpected thing. He said, "So, Frank, what I want you to do is I want you to share all of those three things this morning." And I said, "Oh, I couldn't do that because then I've got nothing left for the rest of the week. If I do that, then I don't even know what I'm going to do this afternoon." So, God, what you're asking me to do is you're asking me to spend these are the big guns. These are the major revelations. These are the three most important things that you're wanting me to give them away now. And if I do that, it'd be all right if I only had one more session, but I've got a whole week and I don't know if I can do that. And he said, "I know. I know you don't know, and I know you can't fill that space. But unless you empty that place inside," he said, I can't add to it. I can't bring more. I can't give greater revelation because what you're holding on to, you've strategically developed the capacity to teach a week based on these three things. And they're like time release, you see. So this is Monday, and this is Wednesday, and this is Friday. And see, I didn't realize that that's what I've done, but I'd structured it in such a way that whether he is there or not, I can still do a whole week. I can still fulfill the requirement. I can still meet, what's the need or the expectation. He said, "Yes, but the only thing is you've limited me." And so he just said, "So do them all this morning." And I remember that was one of the scariest weeks of teaching, but also one of the most amazing. So it's on that understanding that the rest has continued to come. After 30 years, and the wheels have started to fall off. I've been preaching and teaching, and really out of a very narrow framework, I've been holding on to these things that have been my key revelation, but there's no room for anything more because I think that this is full enough. This seems to suffice. It seems to be sufficient for a classroom. It's just I've stopped being a conduit. It doesn't. I expect that it will happen in a ministry time, but not in terms of teaching or speaking. So everything started to crash and burn. Everything started to fail. Things that I had almost taken for granted just began to not happen the way that they used to happen. And so it led me into really what I would call a season of losing. And no matter what I tried, everything just started to fall away. There'd been this spike in the beginning, and there was an abundance of businesses, and we were buying and building houses, and we were doing all kinds of different things. But over a period of probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years, everything just started to, we lost the business, and then we'd lose a house, and then we'd lose 2 more businesses, and then we'd lose another house. And I just said, you know, Father, what is this? What is this? And during that time, he was just saying to me one really simple thing. And he said it so many times that my security was in the fact that this is what he had said. And he just kept saying to me, I will rescue you. I will rescue you. You know, I've been thinking about this whole COVID-19 period. And, you know, for New Zealand, we're into level 1 now, but many other nations are not there. And, you know, and so the process of them losing is still continuing. Some are still losing income. They haven't returned to jobs. They've lost things along the way. You know, business people who were online were saying, you know, I've lost all my life savings. I've lost the staff that I've built up over, you know, over years, really. I've lost my momentum. I've lost my grasp on the business. I've lost my all of my stock, and so you know, it's just, I just realised that this is that same thing. You see, they're in a season of losing. In my season of losing over that 4 or 5 year period, I also was losing my first. It was my mum. Lost her to cancer, and it was really, really tough for us as a family. We had planned on coming together and living in a lifestyle community, and she was only there for 1 year, and then she passed away. My wife Sonia, her mother had come from Wales, and 3 years later, on that same lifestyle block, she had come to live with us. And we built a house and everything, and after 3 years, she passed away as well of cancer. And 3 months after her, my dad got cancer as well, and he passed away very, very quickly. So in this season of losing, I'm losing my loved ones, I'm losing money, I'm losing business, I'm losing houses. And but all the time I can hear Father speaking to me, and he says, I will rescue you. So I remember, you know, after one death and a second death, and now it's only my dad that's left, and we're just holding on barely. And I remember getting notification from the bank saying, well, you know, all your business stuff is gone, so you've only got one thing left. If that falls over, we're going to foreclose. And I got a notification. I was doing insurance at 22 contractors working for me, and one of the ladies had been forging signatures on insurance documents. And the company found out, and I wasn't aware of it, but because I employed her, she got fired and I got fired as well. And it happened just before Christmas, so I'm thinking, oh God, what's going to happen now? All that stuff that I hear out there in COVID-19 world that's what was exactly the same thing was happening to me. It was just imploding. And it seemed to come just, you know, little by little and piece by piece. But now it's getting down to, this is the big crash. And I remember that was just before Christmas. And 2 weeks later, got a letter from the bank because they knew this is the last business. And so they said, you have 30 days. It's all over. We've held out as long as we can, but you've got 30 days to vacate this property. On the 27th day of that 30 days, my father passed away. And I remember just the overwhelming sense of it in my heart was, you said that you would rescue me. And I've held in there as long as I can, but this is the last straw. I can't do this anymore. And so I remember I went outside and just looked up to heaven, and, tears running down my face. My father has just passed away. I have 3 more days before we have to vacate this property. And God, you said that you would rescue me. And I remember just crying out to him. And he spoke to me just virtually immediately. And I just said to him, Father, you said you would rescue me, and this doesn't feel like rescue. And he said, and I will always remember this. He said, I never said that I would rescue you from your circumstances. If ever there was anything that you don't want to hear from God in that moment, that was the thing. I had all of my expectation was in the fact that, because for 30 years, you see, I lived by the last thing that he said to me. And the last thing he said to me in this time was, I will rescue you. So I am, I am just confronted by the fact that, God, there's some big misunderstanding here. You said that you would rescue me. This does not feel like rescue. And I just said, in all honesty, in my heart, my question was this: God, don't you know what rescue is? Rescue is really simple. I'm surrounded by a bunch of circumstances, and you get on your white horse and ride into those circumstances, and you blow the trumpet, and you jump off your horse, and you plant the flag in the ground, and you go, ta-da! And I go, yes, Lord, hallelujah. That's how I rehearsed it in my own mind. And he said, I never said that I'd rescue you from your circumstances. And, from this deep place of bewilderment, really, I said, what are you saying to me? After saying all rescue of all of this time, what are you saying to me now? And he just said, I'm rescuing you from you. As unexpected as that answer was, as soon as he said it, I knew exactly what he meant. In a moment, I'm rescuing you from you. And the reason was because I'm the eldest son, you see. And more and more I'm realizing that when I read the story about the prodigal, I'm identifying much, much more with the oldest son. But I've stayed, but I've worked, but I've done all the things. I've been here. And now you're going to let it all crash around me. And he said, I'm rescuing you from you. And gave me such a funny one-line thing. He just asked me this question. He said, so Frank, who keeps all the plates spinning? I don't know if you've ever had a word from the Lord, but, that was not what I expected a word from the Lord to be. Who keeps all the plates spinning? It's a stick. It's a little plate. You spin it and you go like that. I thought, you're God. You're supposed to say, ta-da! It's supposed to be dramatic. It's supposed to be a huge rescuing. And he asks me, who keeps all the plates spinning? It seemed like such a pathetic question. But again, I knew exactly what he meant. So I said, me. That's what I do. I spin plates. And so another thing comes along and another thing comes along. But because you're the eldest, you have this almost an unspoken expectation and obligation that nobody said to you. It's just yours from birth. I'm the eldest of 10 children. And growing up, I learned how to do everything that my mother did because I'm her number one helper. See, oh, Frank, can you get this? Or Frank, can you get... Actually, in the earlier years, my name wasn't Frank. My name was Boy, which I'm thankful for. At least it wasn't something else. But she would say, Boy, can you do this? Boy, can you do that? And my dad would be the same. Oh, boy, I need you to come here. Come here, boy. I need you to do this. And so that's what it was, you see. My rank, my level was never above boy, so I can't make decisions for myself because I'm just a boy. But everything is, can you do this, can you do that? And growing up, see, my mother had 9 children in 12 years. And so I learned everything that my mum did. I can cook food, I can wash clothes, I can bath kids, I can dress them for school in the morning, I can make lunches, I can all that stuff, because that's all part of what you do as mum's helper. And there was a time when my dad left us for a season. And so I think I was about 16 at that time. And in that time, my mum said to me, she said, well, Frank, we don't need 2 mothers. I need you to have to be like your dad. You see, and my dad, he's speak once and then that's it. Consequences follow. So I now have to learn how to be like my dad. Not necessarily a good dad, but I had to be a dad like he was, and that was you speak once. And I have 5 brothers, and so my job was, my mum said they're too big for me. I'm going to need you to have to be the enforcer. So it's probably the one thing in my heart that I never ever wanted to do. And we weren't, they weren't that old, but it became almost like a separation between me and the rest of the boys. So in this time, I'm learning how to be a mother, I'm learning how to be a father, but now the thing that's confronting me the most is I don't know how to be a son. I don't know how to let somebody else do for me, speak for me, act for me. It's not been a part of my growing up. It's not my makeup. And as the eldest, you see, I've inherited this intrinsic sense of being responsible. So you carry that weight, you carry that load, and it's considered to be normal, you see, because, and you can ask any eldest, that's just how it is. So it's this unspoken thing. And so I'm having this conversation with the Lord, and he says, I never said that I would rescue you from your circumstances, but I am rescuing you from you. That point there was the journey's end. You know what I discovered when it all crashes like that? The amazing thing about this journey is that, the best thing about it actually, is that it begins at the end. This whole Father's love, this whole coming into revelation of who he is, for me, began at the very end. And I had been teaching and talking on this for 30 years. I had my 3 big revelations, and I had built my little world around that, and I was traveling all over the world with my 3 big revelations and my my version of the Father's embrace at the end of that week. So, and the one thing that was, that was consistent was that I'd received the comfort of the Lord in certain parts of my heart, and that's what I had to give away. And that was my little package. And so it was almost enough to make a life out of, but it wasn't everything that he had for me. He said, Frank, I'm rescuing you from you, because the biggest limitation to me coming to you is you. You have assumed the place of being the father. You've assumed the place of being the mother. I tell you what, when my dad came back, man, I thought, Dad, this job is yours. I can't do this job. So I realized that it had to come to an end. I had to come to the end of myself. And sometimes you have to hit the wall in order to really understand that the ability to live, the ability to sustain, the ability to continue to do this isn't inside of you. It needs to come from somewhere else. So I'm now, brought to the end of myself, and we spent about a year after having left that property. About a year, and I think I just went into hibernation. I was depressed. I was defeated. I had lost confidence. I'd lost money and houses, and I'd lost business, and I'd lost my parents and my mother-in-law, and I've just lost momentum. I've lost the ability to carry on the same way as it has been up to now. And so I had to file for bankruptcy, and I remember fighting that for 2 years, because I thought that can't happen to me. There's something I need to do to prevent this from happening, because this can't happen to me. I'm this guy, and it shouldn't happen to this guy. And and this is all of my Christian credentials. But I'm a teacher and a minister, and I'm traveling, and I'm all of these things that I thought were all ticks to the box, you see, but they really weren't. They can't sustain you. So somebody called me, and actually I called. I was supposed to call James, and my wife said to me, Frank, you can't stay in this depression, because depression doesn't do anything. I would just sit in my chair and just, look at my Bible and listen to a podcast, or, pick up a book that I still haven't finished, even though I've had it for ages, but I just read a little bit and put it down. And the answers weren't there, not for what was missing inside of me. So my wife said, look, she said, hon, you need to talk to somebody. And she said to me, what about James and Denise? And, I said, oh, yeah, nah, yeah. So I went in the office. I had the number in my hand, and I sat there for about 20 minutes, just, I'm deeply contemplating whether or not I'm going to make this phone call. And, when you're in depression, you sit there and think about how to begin the sentence. Even the tone of your voice, hi, oh, hi, oh, hi, hi, hi. And it's just, there's no sense of confidence in you. So while I'm sitting there, the phone rang, and I picked it up, and by then I knew what kind of hi to do. I just said, hi. And the voice on the other end just said, hey, Frank, it's me, James. And I said, whoa, James. I said, you wouldn't believe this, man. I was just about to call you. And he said, I know. I thought, this guy is prophetic, man. He is prophetic. And he said, yeah, I know. Your wife just texted me. So I thought, oh, yeah, he's prophetic, all right. He's prophetic. And so I just, burbled a whole lot of things. And he said, look, why don't you just come and spend the weekend with us? And we did. And spend most of our time, at least for me, just pouring everything out. And, I thought I was doing so well for 30 years, and then all of a sudden, crashed and burned. And they were so wonderful. They listened. They just heard. If you're in a place like that, you don't want to lecture. You don't want to, I told you so. You don't want 3 keys or 4 principles or, the 10 rules. You don't want that. You know what? You just want somebody to hear you. And they shared just a little bit of their own journey. So they said, we understand. You just come to the end. There's nothing more. So they suggested that, why don't you come and do an A school? And I must admit, my first thought was, really? My life is just turned to custard, and you are suggesting I go to a school? Like, surely it must be something more imaginative than that. But we ended up going to the school. And it was just such an incredible time of confronting, and but confronting the unfathered places in my heart. So I developed all my own set of defense structures and coping mechanisms, and I have my list of capabilities and strengths, and I will lean towards those and depend on those, because I'm the eldest son, and there's nobody who comes for me. My job is you go and help everybody else. So I'm doing this school, and I am impacted by just so many different things, but 3 one-liners just blow me away. And the first of which was, Jesus didn't die because he loves you. And I remember when I heard that, I was just so deeply offended. I thought, if there's one thing that I know, it's that Jesus loves me. I've known that since Sunday school. I even know the song. And as I'm listening to that, the speaker just says, no, he does love you, but that's not why he died. The initiative for the Son coming actually comes from the heart of the Father. Jesus died because his Father loves you. And even now, as many times as I say that, it always takes me back to, because I realized what was happening was that my foundation had just changed. It's a one-line statement, but it rolled away the fact that Jesus was the foundation, and the realization that actually Jesus has a foundation and it's not him. And so as Jesus graciously just moves aside, he says, the reason I came isn't to tell you about me, it's about the love of the Father. And after 30 years of knowing that, I realized I don't know that. I don't know that. And it's so basic. It's so fundamental. But there's no room inside here, because I've got my 3 big revelations, and it's all based on, Jesus loves me, and I'm, and give me a break. I'm doing the best that I can do. I'm trying my hardest. But another one-liner, Jesus didn't die so that you could have intimate personal relationship with his Father. And I thought, that's a dangerous statement. That's what I've been teaching for the last 25 years, that you can have an intimate personal relationship with the Father. And I teach people incrementally how to have that. See, and he said, no. He said, Jesus didn't die so that you could have this intimate personal relationship with his Father. He died so that you could have his relationship. Because it's full, because it's complete, because it's whole, it exists now, it's eternal, it has been and always will be. And the invitation is for you to come into that. And Jesus says in John 17, this is my prayer, that you will be in me and I will be in you, and we will be in him and he will be in us. And again, it was like a brick wall, just. And so my body is following after my spirit, and as it crumbled on the inside, I just would fall on the floor. In great agony and pain, I must add. It was like travailing on the inside. It was just cramped up, and I would just say, no, how can this be? I've given my life to this simple little theology that I learned at Sunday school. And the last thing was, only one man goes to heaven. All the rest of us go in him. Only one man goes to heaven by virtue of his sinlessness, by virtue of him having fulfilled the law. Only one man goes because he is righteous. All the rest of us go because of his righteousness. We go in him. And I'm thinking, what? It sounds almost silly to say now, but those 3 one-liner things had much greater impact than my 3 big revelations that I've been carrying around with me in my back pocket for the last 25 years. And see, I realized that until you let those go, Frank, you can't have these 3 one-liners. And these 3 one-liners are absolutely universal. They are true for the whole of mankind. And they will break down that theological vessel that's so small, that's so narrow, that's so constricting and so confining, so that the love of God can come, so it can enlarge and increase and extend and expand. And it had all happened because I hit the wall. So over the last 10 years, that's really what it's been like. You see, I came home after my A school, Sandra and I are talking. She has no manifestations during the week, and I have every one of them. Laughing, crying, falling on the floor, just, sometimes I can't even speak. And I'm just saying, how can this be so different in how it's experienced? Because we're sitting right next to each other. And on the way home, she just says to me, she says, "Hon, I don't know what it is, but something inside has shifted. And I can't explain it to you." And I just said, "That's exactly the same as me. Something's changed inside. I can't tell you what it is. I just know it has." So I get home and I look at the place where I've been sitting in my depression. It's just a big armchair with a coffee table and a Bible open and, some books that I don't finish reading. But it looks good, when people come to visit, they say, "Oh, what kind of books?" "Oh, yeah, these are my books. I haven't read them, but they're my books." It looks impressive. And so, I make a fresh cup of coffee and I sit down and I say, "Oh, Father, something has shifted in here, but I don't know what it is." And so I said, if this is not just me, it's not just my imagination, then can you speak to me out of this Bible that is open? It's big, the big, huge, thick, chunky Bible that you don't take with you. This is the one that you need a trailer to bring along behind you. It's a huge Bible. And it just sits there open, and open looks better than closed. Closed looks like you've got one. Open looks like you've been reading it. That's really the whole impression that it's supposed to give. And so I picked it up and I just went, "Okay, on this page, there's got to be something that you can say to me." And I picked it up, was open at Luke 6, and I just began to read. And out of Luke 6, these words caught me. It just says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say?" And I went, "Oh, do I really want to hear this? Do I really want to hear this?" But something shifted inside. And so I continued to read. And it goes on to say, "The man who hears and does what I say, he is like the wise man who builds his house on the rock, and the rain comes and the river rises and the flood beats against that house, but the house stands because it's built on the rock." And she said, "And then there's another man who hears, but he doesn't do. And he builds his house on the sand or on the soil. And then the rain comes, the river rises, and the flood beats against that house." And then it says, "And great is the fall thereof." And I'm thinking, that's why I'm reading this, because my house has just fallen. I've lost my loved ones. I've lost my businesses. I've lost houses. I've lost income. I've lost my sense of purpose and calling. I've lost confidence. This is a whole season of losing. It's just like water through my fingers. I can't even catch it or hold it or stop it. It's just falling away. So I'm sitting there and just looking at Luke 6, and I'm saying, "Oh, well, Father, not much more to say, is there?" And he asked me a question. And it was just such a simple question, but when you're lacking in confidence, when things have all fallen away, you're not really that confident about any answer. You can't take anything for granted. And he asked me a really simple question. He said, "So, Frank, who is the rock?" And I thought, I'm going to hazard a guess here. Is it Jesus? He said, "Hopefully." And, and back came this wonderful affirming voice, "Yes." And I thought, so far, so good. 1 out of 1, And then he asked me the next question, you see. And of course, I've already got one right. So now I'm on the verge of cockiness and having got, 1 out of 1. So he asked me the next question. He said, "So, Frank, who is the wise man?" And I straight away went back to my Sunday school theology. I said, everybody knows that. And I started to sing the song. I'm just sitting there in the chair, and this is my answer back to him. The wise man built his house upon the rock, and the rain came tumbling down. I even did the actions. It's only me and him, but I'm doing the actions. And the rain came tumbling down. And I said, Father, I know I haven't done so well over the last little while, but if you just give me one more chance, I know, just like every other person who sings this song, I want to be the wise man. I can do this. I can be the wise man. I want to build my house just like your house. Please, just give me one more chance. And I didn't even get through, the rest of my begging, pleading prayer. And he just went, wrong. And I thought, come on, God, that can't be right. But if this is a fail, then this must be the ultimate fail. Maybe I've used up all my 100 chances. Maybe I don't know. And he just spoke to me. And so I asked him a question, and he replied immediately. And my question was, well, if I'm not the wise man, then who's going to be the wise man? Thinking about, where does that leave me? He said, if I'm not the wise man, then who is? And he said, I am. And my immediate response was, that's not how the song goes. Didn't you go to Sunday school? It says the wise man built his house upon the rock. And then the rain, and I did some more actions, and he just said, no, I am the wise man. And so now I'm starting to cry. I just said, because this is the ultimate fail. This is it. I had all my chances and I blew it. And he said, I am the wise man. So I only have one question left, because there's only one other guy in the story, and he's not a smart guy. He's not too clever. I said, so Father, if Jesus is the rock and you're the wise man, then who am I? And he said, you are the house. You are the house. My mother's favorite verse, and it just came flooding back to me. She'd already been passed away for probably 8-9 years. And it's been a strange thing for me, but coming into this revelation of the Father's love has opened my heart, opened my eyes, and opened my ears. This is my mother's favorite verse. She would write it on the bottom of a letter that she wrote to you. She would, draw it on a piece of paper and stick it on the refrigerator, and she made a thing and put a frame around it and hung it on the wall. And it was just, I never heard it before. I'd read it heaps of times, but I never heard it. And what it says is this, it's Psalm 127, verse 1. It says, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who try to build it themselves. I said, oh, Father, you're talking to all the plate spinners, aren't you? And I just felt, oh, that's why you're rescuing me. Otherwise, I'm going to keep building that house. And Lord knows I've been building for a long time. And he asked me one day, he asked me the next question. He said, so Frank, this house that you've been building, have you ever seen the plans for it? And I said, oh yeah, no. I have no idea what it looks like, but I am building. I've been cutting and nailing and placing and I've been cladding and everything, but I have no idea what this house looks like or what it's supposed to look like. And he just said, I do. He said, I dreamed that house. And then surprisingly, he said to me, you know, you do understand why it is that I have to build the house. And I just said, no, I'm not taking anything for granted now. He said, you do understand why I have to build the house? Is because, you know, I've been saying this for a long time, Frank. He says, for what man with these hands can build the house for me? And I thought this was my house. And he says, well, no, you are the house, but the house is actually for me. Jesus said, me and my Father will come and make our home in you. He said, that's why you can't build it. I'm preparing a place so that I can come and live in it, you see. And I thought, oh, wow, that's why I can't build it. And immediately, he didn't even finish the verse. He just said, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor. And immediately took me into Matthew 11, where it says, therefore come unto me, all you who labor, and I will give you rest. It's a wonderful verse, you know. He offers us rest from all of our own works. In Hebrews 4, I think it's verse 10, it says, for the man who has entered into this rest has ceased from his own works. He's come to the end of it, you see. You know, the best thing about this journey, it begins at the end. I don't know about you, but at the end, that's usually when I've got nothing. I got nothing planned. I got nothing saved. I've got nothing prepared. I've got nothing. So, you know, I'm crashing and burning over my own limited little theology. I'm crashing and burning over my own skills and abilities, my business acumen, my capacity to do this. My eldest sonness is just slowly crumbling away. And I'm having to learn from the beginning how just to be the little boy. And a few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years now, or maybe not even that long, but I had a heart attack. And heart attacks are very confronting, you know, because you can't bluff heart attacks. You can't just say, no, I'm okay, no, I'm all good, because your body's capacity to stand up again just isn't there. So I have a heart attack, and all of a sudden I'm confronted by this other thing, you see, which has been part of my arsenal, it's been part of my tools of trade. And it's a strange thing, and you may or may not get this, but it's my bigness. It's my size. And sometimes, you see, big can rely on big, just like smart can rely on smart. Clever relies on clever, you see. I had not really thought about it a whole lot, but, you know, but deep down I know that there have been times when I've relied on my physical size to say, to defend, to impart, to convey, you know, something. And I've added to my size, you see, my voice, which is not generally loud, but it can be, you see, when it needs to be. And so, but I realize, you see, I'm lying there on a bed with all these little things plugged into you and whatnot, and you watch all of these, you know, numbers on a screen, and you just see this, you know, boop, boop, boop. And I've always I just want my life to be, you know, just good, just stable life. And I'm sitting there in hospital, and I'm saying to the nurse, I just want to, just have just an ordinary life. I'm not wanting anything really great or extraordinary, just life. And she said, "Oh, you don't want that, honey." He said, "You don't want that." He said, "You're much better to have this. This is a good sign, and you stay with that, okay? Might be some ups and downs, but that's what life is. And then you can be in it." So heart attacks are very confronting, but they bring you to the end of yourself. And when you get to the end of yourself, physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, strategically, I've had all these plans, I'm amazed with just listening to the impact of this COVID-19 experience on so many people who said, but we had made plans. We had life savings, and now they're all gone. We had strategically built and developed our company to here, and some of them are the largest tourist industry icons in the nation, and they're just crumbling. So confidence. So what I discovered was, I go to the hospital, I had a heart attack, and wonderfully I find out that I just have to have a couple of stents, as opposed to, the hacksaw thing where they pull you apart. And, I was just, I don't want to go there. And then I came home and started to get involved more in traveling and teaching again. And I'm away teaching with Alice Adams, and we're in Canada, and we're speaking, and I'm feeling quite, we're getting back on the horse, we're getting the hang of it, I've obviously come to the end of all my weaknesses and all of that kind of stuff. And in the middle of Alice teaching, Father spoke to me. I'm just sitting on the side, trying to put together some few things for my next session of speaking, and he spoke to me and he said, "Frank, you don't really trust me, do you?" And I just thought, This is not a time for you to be saying that. I'm preparing to speak in the next session. Why on earth are you? What is this? What is this? So you just waited when I'm surrounded by a group of people so I can't run away, or what is this? He says, "You don't really trust me, do you?" And then he just goes quiet. I don't know if that's a strategic thing for him, or he just lets you kind of mull it over, or just stew in your own juices, just. And so I'm looking for what's the answer? What's my response supposed to be to this? And then towards the end of the session, he just says, "Frank, you don't really trust me. But well, you do trust me, but only up until 11 o'clock." And I thought, what is this 11 o'clock? I have no idea what you're even talking about. I don't even wear a watch, and all the watches that I've bought have been so cheap that most of them don't even fit around my wrist. I have to carry it in my pocket. So, what's this about 11 o'clock? So, we stop. Alice has finished the first session. She's going to come back and do the next session. I'm having a cup of tea, just pondering all this. What is this? You don't trust me. You only trust me till 11 o'clock. So I go and have a cup of tea and sit down. Alice begins the next session, and he spoke to me again. He said, "Frank, you don't really trust me." "Well, you trust me up to 11 o'clock. And he said, "You know what the problem is? The problem is there are two of you." And immediately I sucked my stomach in. I just went like that. I said, "I know it looks like there's two of me. I'm working on it. Are you talking to me about my bodily condition? Are you talking to me about my weight? If so, just say it. Just say it." And he said, "No, the problem is there's two of you." So I'm now sitting there and I'm saying, "God, you have to put these pieces together because I'm not getting it." And he said, "It's really simple, Frank." He said, "You don't really trust me. You're prepared to trust me. See, what you've developed is a pattern, and the pattern is that you will wait until the 11th hour. And in your mind, in your rationale, you think, I've given you all of that time right up to, I've only got 1 hour left. And if you don't do something, I'm going to have to do something myself. But it's only because you didn't come through. I've waited. I've given you all the time. All of the time has been yours. You could have done it in the first hour, but you haven't done it. You haven't done it. You haven't done it. And now there's only one thing left for me to do. I'm going to have to go back to the old me. And the old me lives in a little pocket on the back of my jeans. He's called Plan B. But the thing is, you see, it's not the old me. I know the old me is dead and passed away. It's the old ways. It's the old mentality. It's the grooves in the record, you see. You see, Frank, you go to the 11th hour and then you click back into the old you. And you think that there's an assurance in that because you know that the old you is always going to come up with a plan. He's always got your back because he'll beg, borrow, or steal. But he'll find a way to fix, to solve, to soothe, to do something, even just to make it a little bit easier, even just to buy you a little more time. That's the way of the old you. It's the eldest son who is going to find some kind of solution. And I just said, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So, Alice is speaking, and I'm sitting in my chair, and I'm digging a little hole in front of my chair, just big enough to be able to take that Plan B out of my back pocket. And I just took my hanky out and just dropped it on the floor. I said, Father, I don't have any other alternative. And I realized, that's what the disciples are saying to Jesus. Jesus is saying, all these people have run away. They've all left him. They came to see the big show and to have the free meal. And then he turns to his disciples and says, so what about you guys? You leaving too? And the disciples just say to him, where else can we go? Where else can we go? You alone have the words of eternal life. You are Jesus Christ the King. You are the Son of the living God. Where else could we go? I've been so used to depending on me that I have, and going back and looking again, I realized that God in his patience, in his love and his care has let me time and time again come to the end of myself. I've always thought that the journey is about me making progress and moving forward. But you know what I've discovered? That most of the significant progress that has been made for me has come when I have stopped, when I've come to the end of me. The wonderful thing, the best thing about this journey is that it begins at the end. After you've got no money left, after you've got no job, after you've got no hope, no confidence, no future, no anything, you see. And you realize, where else can we go? Apart from him, I've got nothing left up this sleeve. It's the 11th hour, and there are no rabbits coming out of the hat, no flowers coming out of that sleeve. Father, if you're going to be my father, then I'm going to have to stop trying to be my own, and you have to be. And I'll just be the little boy. It's been an incredible journey, but you see, it's not uncommon. It's not unlike anybody else's journey. David says, I've learned a number of different things in this walk with him. I've learned that he makes me lie down. When it talks about sheep, and it's really hard to get sheep to be still, and they will only sit down or lie down when they are absolutely sure that they are safe. Other than that, man, they are skittish creatures. They jump around and, you come in this corner and they all run over to that corner because we don't know, what's going to happen here. Are we going to get a haircut? Are we going to go to the butcher, But he teaches us, see, David says, he makes me lie down. He says, I've learned that it's actually in the being still that I've come to know him. Psalm 131 that many of us have meditated on. So he says, I don't concern myself with all of the big questions, all of the big issues. He said, I've learned how to do one really simple thing, how to quiet my soul. Man, what a wonderful gift that would be, through COVID-19, that in this time we've learned how to quiet our soul. And we're surrounded by circumstantial stuff, don't get me wrong. But he hasn't come to rescue you from your circumstances. He's come to be with you and in you. And he's rescuing us from ourselves. Even after the 11th hour. So Isaiah says, wait. I've learned that the secret is in waiting. The key for him has been wait. Wait for the Lord. Even if your waiting takes you to 11:30 or 5 to 12, wait for the Lord. Wait for him. Paul says his language he uses, I've learned how to die to myself. He says, I every day I pull the hanky, the plan B out of my back pocket, I dig a hole and I bury it. And I say, that's not an option. Moses says, we're heading for this promised land, but I think it's Joshua's declaration. He says, if you don't go with us, we ain't going. We're not looking for a place where we can go and do our own thing. We're looking for the place to be with you and in you. And so if this was your plan in the beginning, then I trust that it's going to be you in the end, not just me. So Jesus in Philippians 2, it says that he empties himself. I've been really struck by the humility of the Father and the humility of Jesus and the humility of the Holy Spirit. I mean, this is the sovereign Lord. And you know what it says that he does? He says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. I'm thinking, you are the sovereign Lord. You can huff and puff and blow my house down. You can speak a word and I am no longer. But you come to where I am, you knock on the door and you wait. And if we want to receive you, if we want to receive this gift, then all we have to do is open the door. Thought, oh, Father, you make it sound so simple, and I've made it so complicated. The journey begins at the end. Hebrews 4 and verse 10 says, the man who has entered into this rest. David had to find it. Paul had to find it. Jesus knew it in the very beginning. They've all discovered, that the beginning of this journey actually starts at the end by us being empty, by us saying, I can't do this. Don't have to do this. If any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all without reproach, but he gives generously and freely. So today, if you hear his voice, harden not your heart. You know what hardening heart looks like to me? Don't say, it's okay, I got this. I don't got it. It's the one thing I've been learning. I don't got this and I don't have to got this. But I have a resource, I have an essence, I have a Father, I have a lover whose intentions towards me are only for good. I think as Oswald Chambers said, The root of all sin is in the belief that God is not good. But we've discovered that He is. And He is gooder than we could ever have imagined. So I want to encourage you that the journey begins at the end. At the end. And, during this COVID time, many of us have been introduced to the end of ourselves in some way. He's not trying to destroy our lives. He's trying to give it to us. It is the Father's good pleasure to give to us the kingdom. It's just, is there room in here to receive it? Or is it filled up with, I've got this. I'm okay, doing good. So let me just pray and just want to say, it's not the stuff that we're all going through. It's really the same for all of us. It's really the same. But so is His love towards us. It's not greater or less for anybody. He keeps coming and knocking on the door, and if we open, He will pour Himself in and fill every empty space, every unloved place, every eldest son's independence. He comes and fills that space. So, Father, thank you that you are the wise man. I went back to read that verse again, and it says, the one who hears and does what I say, it says, he is like the wise man. He's not the wise man himself. The one who is the wise man is the Father. He said, before any of your days were, I knew you. He said, behold, I have plans for you, says the Lord. Not plans for your destruction or your calamity, not to bring you undone, but they are plans in order to give to you a future and a hope. And not one that you have to sustain within yourself. You don't have to join the Plate Spinners International Club. Thank you, Father, that you and your grace is sufficient for us. And even though our circumstances may not change the way that we would like them to change, the wonderful thing that does not change is that you come to be with us. So, Father, we want to cast all our cares on you because you care for us. You are the all-sufficient one. And apart from you, was not anything made that was made. Thank you, Father, that you are patient enough to wait outside our door, but also patient enough to watch us come to the end of ourselves, just as the son, the youngest son who left the home of his father. And the father waited until he came to his senses and realized that everything I really need is in my relationship with the Father. Thank you, Father, that you are good. You are good. You are good. Thank you for your gift of including us in your world of goodness. We don't have to fend for ourselves. And in this time of COVID-19, may we find rest from all our own works. But the one who has entered into the rest of the Lord has ceased from his own works. Amen.